Hi. Good. All right. Wonderful. Let's get started so that we are not running over time. So today I'd like to talk to you about web components. And if you have been here 2 years ago, you have probably, maybe, possibly also heard me talking about web components. So it's interesting that I'm coming back to talk about the same topic, kinda, but it's kinda not the same topic because A, these standards have changed a bit, and B, I'm gonna not only give you a quick introduction into what web components are and how the latest standards work, but also we're gonna build a small application with it to show you how it actually looks like when you do not just a component, but an actual example of using the component. So to start with, we're gonna look at the web architecture in 2017. What's kind of like state of the art and what do we get when we look at applications from, well, today. Then we're going to have a look at the web component standards, and this is going to be the updated version of what I did 2 years ago, because 2 years ago it was version 0 of the specification. So back then Mozilla and Google agreed on how they think it should look like, but there was still disagreement with Apple and Microsoft. These disagreements have been resolved in July last year, and since then we have web components version 1, which is the ready specification implemented in most browsers or going to land in the others soon. Then we're going to build a component together, a really small one, not a very fancy thing, but just to show you how the standards play together. And then we're going to have a look at how components kind of interface. Actually, I changed the order, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to also look at how component interfaces with, each component interfaces with other components, and then we use that knowledge to build a small application from different components. One of them is the component that we build. The other ones are basically things from the internet. So we don't have to build these ourselves. And then I'm just going to summarize it. So, yeah, right? The state of web applications in 2017 is different from what it was 10 years ago and 2 years ago and 1 year ago. But it's still, depending on how you look at the web applications that you're building, it is more or less a mess. That's not necessarily a bad thing because the web is a very resilient platform. So depending on what your goals are, being messy is okay if that does not break fundamental principles of what the web is about. However, if we are looking at markup these days, which is what the web is, who knows what application this is? It's a web application I'm sure everyone here has seen before. Right. Who here uses Gmail? Hands up. That is Gmail. Obvious, right? I mean, I can tell from, BK, obviously, like class BK, that's obviously something from Gmail. Not really, I don't know. So I think it should be more like this. That would be nice, that you have like, okay, aha, this is the Google Mail app, and it has a sidebar with some stuff in, and then it has the email list, and in this list, each item is an email thread with some ID that doesn't matter to me as a human, and then we have emails in the email thread, and they come from someone and go to someone, and they have like a subject, and then they have some content. And I think this is nice because it is readable, it is understandable, it is semantic. So if I'm parsing this as a Google bot, okay, hopefully Google bots will not scan my email inbox, but let's face it, Gmail does. But I mean, if this is a website, if it's a web application and this is a forum, it would be really nice to have like a possibility to express this in a semantic way, that this is a thread with different postings and the topic and all sorts of things. So I think the semantic markup here is actually much better, and it is easier for a lot of users. Also, composing applications like this. So for instance, if I'm building a different application, but we are generalizing this to something thread and something list, then I can take it for other applications as well. And also, yes, I like JavaScript. I've been using Angular, Ember, React, and whatever. I'm actually using a lot of Vue.js recently. So JavaScript is nice and great for us web developers, but we are forgetting a gigantic amount of people, the web authors. a lot of people have started on the web by literally just using HTML and putting some content together. And I think this is a beautiful thing, because you can not just build documents as you could do 10 years ago with HTML, but you can use it to build applications. It's a gigantic application platform, and we should not limit it to like having people learn to like write functional or I'm actually missing the word, imperative code. I think the declarative model of building applications is really nice as well. So, to do that, whoops, what was that? I think the battery is dying, so that's going to be fun. Good. So to do that, what we need semantic building blocks. And the interesting thing in 2016, 15-ish, we started to see that a bunch of frameworks, independently of each other, had an epiphany, a eureka moment where they went, components. That's nice. React has components. Angular 2 has, or Angular 4 as well, has components, and probably Angular 10 as well. I think we're at 12 now, aren't we? Angular has them, Ember has them, Vue has them, Aurelia.js has them. Pretty much everyone said, you know what, probably a good idea is to step back and say, we have components that are isolated more or less, and they communicate to each other with a certain interface. And one of the things with React, for instance, was that they had this other breakthrough where they went, this entire like event thing is actually a bit messy over time, so how about we have like a unidirectional flow? And then that also works really well with components, because components basically change the state through actions, and then you feed that back, and that's really nice. So components is a concept, as a general concept, is something that is larger than all of our frameworks. However, the components have not necessarily been interoperable with each other. I have a hard time getting an Angular application working with React nicely. There is possibilities, but it is like, how do I put it? If I need to have a 45-minute talk about how I make these two work together, that's a bit, it should be easier. And we are also basically ignoring all the DOM APIs and all the things that HTML parsers do for us already. So how about we use the platform rather than try to put ourselves as far away from the platform as we can? And that's what web components are about. And web components, when we talk about it, is actually a set of 4 standards. And we're going to look into the standards. The first one is actually really well supported, down to Internet Explorer 12, I think, which is the first edge. The template element allows us to say, I have this part of markup that I do not want in my application right away, but I want to use it as a kind of, well, as a template to then fill in with data. So you can do things like, I can prepare a complex DOM fragment for a list item and then easily copy it into my actual list and fill it with data. So what we have been doing with handlebars and mustache and all these libraries can now be done in the DOM. Why is that great? It is great because it is using the platform. So we are basically having a way, the template element is a way into the browser that allows us to say, I want a part of HTML that I want to use multiple times and at random times in my application lifecycle. So you don't have to kind of hack around the platform and use inner HTML and something like that. So you're basically skipping ahead in the parsing steps, which makes it much, much faster. And if you compare using inner HTML versus template elements versus create element, you'll see that basically template element is on the winner side. It's much, much faster. And it's easy to use because it is declarative. Some people say the API is a bit contrived and a bit complicated. That's maybe true, but I think it's not a problem if we create a thin wrapper around it, such as Polymer has done, for instance. And then we have custom elements. They're not as well supported. Firefox supports them, but has them behind a flag. And Edge does not support them yet, but they're working on implementing it, so it's going to land at some point soon. Safari and Chrome already do support them. Then we have Shadow DOM. It's the same situation. Firefox has implemented it. Oh, sorry, I should go back. Custom elements, what that is it allows us to say, I have my own HTML tag, and it does this. So instead of having to go, okay, I'm using a, I don't know, if I'm using a div and give it a class of tab, to have a tab bar, like I have div class tab box, div class tab, And then you nest them, and then you have a bunch of divs. Because if I'm doing the div soup thing, then I'm basically ending up, I'm ending up here, right? So this is what they did. Obviously, they had a minifier going over the class names and shortening them, but this might have been like div class list. And it's like, why is it a list if this is not a list, this is a div, you idiots. And then this might have been like a card or a item or something. So we have been abusing classes to do what we should have done instead, to do what we should have done with, okay, the clicker is dead, I'll put it away because it just confuses me as well. What we should have done instead is we should have done this, where we create our own HTML elements that basically encapsulate semantic meaning. For instance, this could be like forum thread and forum post instead of email thread and email content. And then we know that it encapsulates a certain piece of look and feel and a certain functionality. And that is what, it's not the clicker, it is my computer, nice. That's what custom elements is about. So we can tell the browser, I have this piece of functionality here, and I have this piece, this content, this template content, and I want to use that to have my own HTML tag. So you can have a tag like a modal dash dialog. Why do I always say like something something dash something something? That is because the browser needs a way to figure out, is this an actual HTML element, or is this something that's someone programmed? Is this a custom element? Custom elements have to contain a dash in their name. So that's how the browser basically figures out, aha, this is something that the user has done. Sweet. So that's custom elements. It allows us to write our own HTML tags. Then we have Shadow DOM. Shadow DOM is an interesting thing that is not a security feature. People mistake it for a security feature sometimes. It is not a security feature. What it does is, if you have your DOM tree, and let's say I have a style that says everything on this page should be red, and then I have a component, and in the component I say all the text in this component should be blue. What does CSS do? The last one wins, everything on the page turns blue. That's not cool, right? And then you're like, CSS, it's terrible, I don't want to use it, I want to do it in JavaScript as well. Which is fine, but you could also alternatively figure out to use the platform, because what Shadow DOM allows you is to say, you know what, from this point on, from this component element on, you are in your own little world. So whatever you do is limited on this one. And also it isolates to the outside. So for instance, if your component has a button, and then someone on the outside of your component in the application runs a JavaScript that removes all buttons, it would be, like for me as a web developer, it would be surprising if I delete buttons that are inside some component. Imagine you have a video player, and then you say, okay, I have 2 buttons on my website, and then I have a video player. And the video player obviously has buttons, play, pause, skip forward, skip backwards. And I say, okay, I'm now running like document query selector all button, and then remove all these buttons from my document, and then the video player loses their buttons. That would be weird, and I'm like, what? So to prevent that from happening, Shadow DOM allows me to say, no, this component lives in its own little world, and when I ask for all the buttons on the page, I ask for everything outside of that little world. There is ways of actually reaching into the Shadow DOM, that's why it's also not a security feature. You can go in and remove the buttons from the video player, but you have to make a deliberate effort. You can't accidentally do it. And that's what Shadow DOM is about. We'll see all of this at play in a second. Then last but not least, we have HTML imports. It's a lovely one, but a tricky one. As the browser support chart tells us, there's a few browsers missing, all but Chrome. And that is because HTML imports are disputed. HTML imports is basically you know how you import an external style sheet. Link, rel, style sheet, nah. And now we have link, rel, import something something.html. And in the .html, we define a component. And then we can use that component. Hurrah! It's like Lego, basically. You're putting things together from the internet. Putting things together from the internet can be really bad if you're not taking care of where you take it from. Anyway, so the problem is these links are synchronous, so they block rendering until they have resolved. And the other thing is that Mozilla, Microsoft, and Apple have said, we're not sure if this is the right thing and if we need it, because we're gonna have ES6 modules, so JavaScript modules in the browser coming soon, and maybe we can use that instead. I don't know, we'll find out, who knows? So they're experimenting with ES6 modules, and then we'll see what happens to HTML imports. So take that as not very granted. All of these 4 standards are polyfillable down to IE 10. So you can use them in the wild unless you have to support Asian markets, which are broadly on IE 7 or 6. But then again, Asian markets, 1 kilobyte downstream, try downloading an Angular app with that. So we have these 4 standards, and the interesting thing that I've seen in the past is that a bunch of frameworks went, that's interesting. And because it is, from the outside perspective, if your component is written with web component standards, it is an HTML element, so every single one of them can interact with HTML elements. So every single one of them can actually interact with your web component. But also, some frameworks have turned it around. For instance, Angular, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, is using Shadow DOM, or can use Shadow DOM, and I think custom elements as well, right? Yeah. So Angular is looking into that. Ember is looking into that. Vue is using templates, and I think plans on doing some of the others as well. Aurelia, as far as I can tell, is using Shadow DOM and template, and plans on doing that somehow. Polymer, the last on the list, is actually using all of that and just wraps it really thinly in version 2. It wraps it a little more heavier in version 1. So we are getting somewhere where it's getting really interesting, because we are now learning to build components that are not framework specific. And that is interesting in my opinion. Also, they are using possibilities that the browsers give us, the web platform gives us, and I think that's a win. So let's look into building a component. We're going to build a component by starting with a class. Yes, it's ES6. If you have not seen ES6 before, hi, this is 2017. You have a bit of catch-up to do, I think. So we are basically creating a class that extends from the HTML element constructor. Then we can theoretically use the constructor as well, or like override it and call the original one. Then we have a connected callback, a disconnected callback, and a few other callbacks. These are lifecycle callbacks that tell us something has happened. Connected callback is important because that's the moment when our component comes alive. The constructor runs when someone creates it, but it's not in the DOM yet. The connected callback is run after we have been inserted into the DOM. So that's when someone is actually starting to display us. And that's when we can do things like set up event listeners, put things into the DOM. And the disconnected callback is the opposite. We have been removed from the document again. So we can, for instance, remove the event listeners again and clean up ourselves, basically. And then we have to, it is my computer, holy crap. We have to not worry if you can't do it with ES6. There's an ES5 version of that. So ES6 classes are basically just a sugar on top of the prototype system that JavaScript has had for ages. But really, you probably want to start using ES6, and if you really have to support older browsers, which you do, yes, you do have to support older browsers, please then use something like Babel to transpile it into older code. If for some reason you can't or you don't want to, you can also write web components using ES5. It's just a little more writing. So once we have that, we can do things like this attach shadow. What the hell is that? Well, what this is, so this is our HTML tag in the DOM. So this is our element. And then we say everything that starts like inside, everything that is inside us, everything that I'll put into my own element here will be excluded from the rest of the document. We'll have a little sandbox that we are in. That's the shadow DOM that I'm speaking about. Why do I say mode open then? We'll see in a second why open is not a bad thing. This has been added relatively late. You could also have a closed model. Basically, the difference is here I'm allowing someone who inherits from my component to override my internal DOM. Or even the application could, if they really wanted, to go into my DOM and change the structure of my component. if I don't do that, I'm literally excluding that possibility to accidentally or to deliberately go into my document. That's a possibility. I don't think it's a good thing to do because you want to keep it open for extensibility, right? You want to give the person the possibility, the web authors the possibility to do something with your component that you might not have intended, in my opinion. So we do that, and then we register our component by saying custom elements.define. And the first thing is the tag name that we're going to use. And I said it has to have a dash. So in this case, I just go like my-comp, and then I give it the class. And now I can use it either by using document.createElement my-comp, or I literally write in angle brackets my-comp somewhere in the document. So that's a possibility. And I can use my component now. My component is now ready to be used. How does my component interact with other components, and how do I configure it and all that kind of stuff? Well, first things first, let's have a look at this wonderful div tag. This div has a class attribute, and the value is highlighted, and it has some property that is the text that it contains. Some properties and attributes exist with the same name. So for instance, .href and href in a link are both a property if I'm using it in the HTML like that, and an attribute if I'm using it in the HTML like that, and a property if I'm using .href. So properties and attributes are not the same, but they can be can have the same name, right? So text content, for instance, I can't go into the div and type text content hello, and then it shows up. It doesn't work. It doesn't have that attribute, but it has that property. Good. So basically what this is, it's two different APIs, right? One is the HTML way. I can also do it via JavaScript using setAttribute, hasAttribute, getAttribute. But I can also just use the property API in JavaScript. Feels more natural because we're not using the DOM, we're using the object as if it's any object, really. It's not a special object. So if we look at the kind of reason why that exists is the properties are an imperative API. I can use them in code, in JavaScript code, but if I want to get to web authors that do not like to write code, but actually are fine writing markup for a website or a web application, I give them a declarative API with the attributes. That also can often be used for the initial values, to kind of initialize your component with values. We can sync the two, so I would highly recommend you always have, if you have attributes, you also have same named properties, and you can sync them by using getters and setters. So if I do my component .mode, I basically just get whatever is in the component. If I do .mode equals lol, then what I do is I set the attribute as well. Also, if we change the attributes, if someone literally calls .setAttribute on our element, we can tell the class that we want to observe a certain attribute, so we give it a list of the attribute names that we want it to observe, and then when that happens, we call, or the browser calls a function called the attribute changed callback, gives us the name of the attribute that has been changed, the old value, and the value after the change. So we can do that as well. But how do we communicate back? So that is like the application gives us input into our component, but how do we do it like the other way around? Well, think about how do HTML elements do it? How does an image tell you that it has finished loading or that it couldn't load? It uses an event, right? So you can say like image.onload or image.addEventListener load. And we can do the same thing in our component. So we can say, has our weather element finished loading? And then maybe it has some detailed information on the weather as well. And inside our component, we can use this dispatch event, new custom event, and we can give it any name that we want and any details to pass along with it. So we have like a payload. For instance, if this is a weather component, the details could contain the temperature, the description of the weather, or something like that, or the location that we have loaded. So events are basically the way up. And now we build a component. Let's do that. So we're going to build a component that is called weather info. What it does is, there's an open weather map API that we can call to get weather information, so it fetches this data from the API. I load a little icon that I get from the API as well, so that we have the little rainy icon there. 11 degrees in rain, that sounds great. It allows to use imperial or metric units, and as everyone in the world really uses metric. That would be the default, and we can only switch it over to using imperial units if we really want to. And it allows us to change the city, so we can configure the city, and we can configure the unit if it's imperial or metric. And it should also have a method for us to imperatively say, update this. Good. So, I have created a scaffold, and that is far too tiny. Let's make this larger. Okay, how do I get back in? Better, or is it still too small? Good, okay, people in the last row go yes. So if you can't read it, there's plenty spots available in the first and second row. And I highly encourage you to take that opportunity. Okay, so here I'm starting with a template. It doesn't have to have an ID, I just give it an ID here. I have an image, I have a piece of text, a span that is a placeholder for where the city will go, a span for where the temperature will go with the unit, and then a span for where the description is going to go. So that's my template. It is a placeholder of DOM that I can use. Then I register my component. It is pretty empty and pretty boring, and it doesn't really do anything. But I could go console log hello, and then I could write an applicapsa. That was not what I wanted to do. I could write a little application that is a HTML document. Surprise. We're in web development track here. Why does he do HTML? The web is all JavaScript today. So outdated. But hey, I'm a mythical creature from fairy tale land, so go screw yourself. So I want to load my weather-info HTML. So I'm importing the element, and then in the body, I can use the element like this, weather info. And I can save this as, oh, I have to save it into, it doesn't matter. I'll do it here, and then I'll navigate, I'll change this to be weather info / weather info. And now if I open a new tab and go to localhost 8000, I see nothing. And that is obvious because our component doesn't do anything really, except it logs hello. So it has done that, so yay, okay, we have achieved a thing. We can now congratulate ourselves and have a beer. Or maybe not, who knows? Maybe our boss would not like to see that. So let's actually go back and build the thing out from here. So I think the first thing that would be good is to get the template. There's an interesting quirk, and this is part of why the HTML import spec is not very famous and well liked. To get to the template, we can't just do document.querySelector, because document is the main document, which is our application. If our application runs, document is the document that the application is in. And this comes from a different document, which is our component document. So how the hell do I get there? Well, what we can do is we can say document.current script, which is the script that is being evaluated right now. And then we can ask for its owner document, and that is the document that the script lives in, and that's our component document. Now, because life's hard and rough, someone said, you know what, we have a polyfill as well, but for reasons that I won't disclose, yeah, don't question me on this, okay? And then I can query selector into my template. This is funny because the line gets really long, so I'll just leave it like that, it's fine. And the template itself then has a content property, and the content property is a document fragment. If you've never heard that, it's fine. It's basically just a DOM node that isn't really a DOM node and can be cloned really easily and fast. And now we have it here. Great. So what we can do now is we can say this attach shadow, mode open. Good. And now what we can do is we can say this shadow root, because we have created this shadow root as our kind of shadow DOM main node or parent node. And I can append a child to it because it's a DOM node as everyone else is as well. And now I import my template, and I want it not just to use the top level, I want to use the entire tree of that. And I have attached the template to my shadow root. So now we should be starting to see something. Ah, amazing. Okay, fine, back to the code. Now, actually, let's have one more look into the DevTools because I kind of find this is worth mentioning. So what we see here is there's this shadow root and it says open, and in here is an H1 element and a paragraph and all that kind of stuff is in here. And it is hidden away, as I can demonstrate to you. You know that DevTools have this lovely shorthand property that allows me to write document query selector where I don't have to write document query selector, I just get $. If you didn't know that, it has it and it's fucking amazing because I was like, and you don't have to do that, you just do $, like you don't have to use jQuery, it's in Chrome apparently. So I can ask for H1 elements, nothing. But wait, there is an H1 element, but it's in the shadow DOM, so haha, no shadow DOM for you. And I can ask my weather info, and I get the weather info, and then I can ask for its children, and I get nothing, because it's in the shadow DOM. But, ooh. And here I have to type query selector, so it's like, oh, I can do right. So that's what open means. We have the .shadow root property, and we can access it from the outside. But it still prevents me from accidentally changing something in the component. Okay, now that's still not like super exciting because it looks like shit. And it's not very nice. So let's add a style thing here, and let's say, for instance, so host is the element itself, basically, or the whatever hosts our shadow root. And I can say I want a border, 1 pixel, solid, Rebecca purple. Whoa, it even, good on you code. Display block, because by definition it's inline block, and then we give it a padding of 1 EM, for instance. And it ignored me. That's amazing. I have seen this coming, and I'm like, yeah, why do I even worry? Is it colon host? Nope. It has outdated selectors, so that's always a fun one. Isn't it host? I think it is host. Yes, it is host. So why doesn't it evaluate it? I don't think it cached it. It might, but I don't think so. Because if I now it did cache it. Lovely. No, it should not have cached it. Why does it cache it? Oh, because no, you know why? Because on my work computer I have autosave, and here I don't. Yeah, that was clever. So there we go. We now have a box, and it has a padding, and it has it has all the things. The text also looks terrible, so I'm just gonna do like font family, Jesus. Yeah, whatever. Whatever you suggest. I'm not a designer, I just go, sure. Good, slightly better. But now we also want to allow people to configure it to actually display any real data, right? So what we can do then is, I can give it, well, properties, right? And as we have said, we want to sync the properties with the attributes. So what I can then do is I can do get city, and city shall be whatever this get attribute city returns. So this will give us, if we have an attribute in the HTML, this will return us the actual value. And then I say just value because I'm a lazy bum. And I go this set attribute city. It's a bit of typing really. And I can maybe save some lines here just for brevity reasons. Okay, so now we have our attribute, but we're not really using it. But what we can totally do is, we can, for instance, say content here, and then I import the template here, and then I append content. And then I can go content.query selector city equals this city. So this is going to call the getter function for city. What? Oops. No, that was just, you have no freaking idea how hot it is in this onesie. I mean, I look hot as well, I know, but it's also like physically hot. Doesn't work, surprise, surprise. But what we can do is we can obviously go into, I don't know why it doesn't allow me to easily switch to the applications. We can do city equals Lugano, for instance, right? And then I go back, and then it does not, what? Invalid left-hand, line 31. And none of you caught that one. Everyone's like, ha, he's putting getters and setters over class. But no one actually saw this one, huh? Query selector equals this. Why is this not? Why? How is that a problem? Oh, because yes, no, it's oh, text content. No. But nice try. Let's try that. Let's ask it. So, yo, hi, what's your city? Undefined. That's interesting. Why is it undefined? This attribute city. It should do the thing. It doesn't do the thing. It's very sad. Live coding always fails, so I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm prepared. What's my next tag? My next tag is git checkout to template. I'm having none of this. Ta-da! It has, we have new things here. We might, or has it checked out actually, or has it given me an error? It gave me an error because of the, okay, git stash, git checkout to template, git stash pop, because I didn't have the index HTML merge conflict. It gets better. This is what happens. This is what I get for it. Updated upstream. So I basically want this and not this, I guess. Or do I want this? I probably do not want this because that has broken on me. But here, actually that's the wrong tag, so I don't even have to undo my merge conflict. So I'm just gonna go git checkout. No, actually git resets probably first. I love it. This is why I don't want to do live coding normally, but you know, that's fine. That's all right. I can take it. Nope, do not save it. I just want to reload it. So here, it's, in my opinion, it should be the freaking same code, but okay, if it's different, then whatever. So the difference really here is that I'm not even filling in the template yet. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. But, if things go as planned, which they probably won't, that's okay. They don't display it because I haven't updated the content. But city is updated. Ha! Okay, so this part works. So what I can now do is I can say content query selector dash city text content equals this city. And I should save it because I don't have autosave enabled. Remember that, Martin. There we go. Okay, so now we have like the city in, great, I guess. What is nice is that I can also say city equals Zurich. It doesn't update in the template, but what it does is it updates it in the attribute. So it has changed the attribute. It doesn't update in the template because we have to do this somewhere. And probably the easiest thing is I can just have an update function in my element. Update. What am I writing even? It's like I forgot everything. But on the other hand, I'm a unicorn, so it doesn't really matter. And and then I can just query this shadow root, and I can do the same thing, and then I call the function initially after I save the component. And then we have the same here, but if I now, query selector of null. This shadow root should exist. No? Yes. Interesting. I'll just move on and pretend I've not seen that. And it doesn't go away, that's amazing. But it updates. Query selector of null. You know, I can't stand the error message right now, so I'm just whatever. Moving swiftly on. So, I can now dynamically update the city I'm looking for. I can also ask for imperial, which is if it's imperial or not, if we want metrics, and I can say true. And what happens there is that it actually changes the attribute as well. So I can also set Boolean attributes as well. And good, all fine, all great. I won't bore you with me typing in the code for the freaking Open Weather API. So I will just go git stash, git stash, just git stash it. And go straight to the completed component, 5 completed, 5, Jesus, no, 4, it's 4. That's a fun game of what the heck? The completed component looks like this. Let me just make sure that we have the latest code. It's pretty much still the same template. It is still the same code for this. We are observing the two properties, attributes. So if they change, our callback is being fired. Here's how you set a Boolean attribute or unset a Boolean attribute, by the way. And then in the update function, all we basically do is we do the API. Actually, let me get that. We do an API call. We do a fetch call to this API with the properties that we are interested in. And then, we fill in the actual template. And then we also dispatch an event. Okay, fair enough. I should now be able to, I don't even care. But here we see that we have our weather data has been fetched. I can also add an event listener to the load event. So I ask for load, and then we're just gonna pipe it into console log because I can't be bothered. And what we can then do is we can ask for the city of Zurich instead. And as you can see here, this is our event handler. It has fired. And in details, I have a description and the temperature as well. So theoretically, any Angular or Vue.js or whatever application can react to these events and set the properties as well, and then you'll get weather in Zurich is actually clear and 12.6 degrees. What was it in Lugano again? It's warmer, but it's cloudy. I'm not sure if this is better. All right. So that's how you build your component with web components. That is a lot of code for such a small component, so that's really annoying. But if you're interested and you speak German, someone, that is me, wrote a book on Polymer. Polymer is a library that allows you to not write as much code and basically just takes away all the painful writing, all that stuff, and wiring up your templates. So it would be much smaller and shorter, but I believe I should not teach you a framework, I should teach you how to work with the platform if I'm talking about web components being amazing for working with the platform, and then I introduce a library. That is a bit stupid. So take that, but if you go like, oh, but web components are so much work, then pick a framework or library that you like that basically hides that away. But that's the low-level components and the low-level parts in the web platform that we can use. And now, I'm running a little behind of time, I think the next thing that we're going to do with that is just to wrap it up. If your application talks to the component, you can use attributes and properties. The other way around, events are the thing that you probably want to do. And now let's build an application, and that's the best slide ever because we've seen it before. We go back to code. Ooh. And what did I have here? Oh, yeah. I'll just go to, no, not 6. Why do I type the wrong buttons all the time now? Right, let's go back to the editor. We are now having an additional directory that's called app, and I have installed some things from the network because never trust the network during a presentation in a conference. And what I have been doing here is I am loading a bunch of components that someone else wrote, in this case Google's Polymer team, for layouts and stuff. And I'm styling them a bit, I make them, like this is as if it is a normal HTML tag, right? So I'm giving them a color and a background color, and I'm making them in a certain size and all that kind of stuff. And then I say I have a header layout, and I want an app header that has a toolbar, that has a name, weather of my application. My weather application is called weather because I'm super creative. And I have an icon button with a wonderful add icon. And then I have a paper card that shows the weather info for Lugano. I actually forgot to load the weather components, so I should probably do that. So let's do that real quick. There we go. And if I'm now going out of my presentation and into the application, there we go. Okay, I forgot to import the scroll effect as well. So here we have a little button, and as you can, it's not that easy to see, but it has like the material bubbly, ripply thing around it, and it looks kind of nice and clean. It doesn't display the weather for Lugano because I also forgot to load the paper card, as I noticed now, because it's in a paper card. So let's do that real quick. Link rel import href power components paper card. It's a common convention to name the file the same as your component is named, so you have a directory and then inside. That's an interesting one. So paper card is loaded, but it goes, nah, I don't think so. But that's actually, it is here, it just doesn't display anything. I might have forgotten to save. I did forget to save. Thank you very much. I'm a forgetful unicorn. Oh, and now the network has failed me. Amazing. Ha, okay. Is it getting warmer, or am I hallucinating? It should get sunnier, not just warmer. How does it get warmer when it's not sunny? Anyway, maybe people fart too much, I don't know. Cool, so what I can then now do is, this application is a really simple application. I want to have a list of things that I can display. And as I'm not really having enough time, I have to unfortunately do like git stash. I stash all the things. 6 storage, because I wanted to show you, basically, there's another component that I can use. It didn't actually reload, did it? Oops. And now my files viewer has gone bonkers. So there's a component called iron local storage. I give it the key in the local storage, and then where I want to bind this property to. And now I'm using Polymer things, basically, because I'm a lazy bum. This is a data binding in Polymer. So that means that whatever value is in this is being saved to local storage, and whatever is saved in local storage when I load the application comes out and is available. And it does like JSON parsing automatically. And what I can do with that is I can have another Polymer component that is called the DOM repeat. And I repeat over this array of locations, and then for each of them, I display, in this case, just the name of the item, the content of the item. And when I load this, it will not show me a nice weather, but it gives me, like, I have these 2 locations already in my local storage. And then I can go on. I know that I have no time, so I'm just going to skip ahead. And I can reload. And basically what the code now does is there's a bit of JavaScript here. I get the icon local storage. If it's empty, I make sure that I'm always having at least an empty array in here. If you use an actual Polymer app, it's easier than that, but I have to do it manually because I'm avoiding Polymer, except for using their components. If it loads, then I'm reloading the list, and I'm making sure that I log that out. And then here I have a button. The button has a click listener, and I click it, and it asks me for the name of the city, and now I can go burn. And then we get the weather in Bern, but the network has died, so we don't get it. So I reload, and voila, right? The network died on the image. That's amazing. I love it. The network is really good on my computer today. Ah, there we go. So, and we have a weather app. Code is online. I will share the link later on. Because I'm basically being like nudged at me running late. Let me quickly wrap up. Components should be self-contained building blocks. And the good thing is if you're using web components or Polymer or anything that produces web components, they're interoperable. You should also document the interface, and it should always have like the sync between attributes and properties. And please make sure that they are actually working properly and that they're syncing in both directions. Run accessibility tests on it because it's really important. Make your Shadow DOM open so that people can extend it. There's libraries that help you do that. For instance, Polymer. Web Component Tester is an amazing thing to test your components. Vulcanize, there's documentation elements. Slides are online. I'll be around at the day. You find me really easily. I'm the unicorn. I'm on Twitter if you're like, ugh, talking to people, especially when they're in onesies, is uncomfortable. And I blog. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day. My time